Hey up, Angus the singing driving instructor here again. Welcome to this bit of a briefing on foot controls. Okay, so I like to think that you've got your first lesson coming up and that you've arrived here so that you're doing lots of preparation for it, or it might be that you've had your first lesson and you're just wanting to recap things, which is good too. So this little chat, like I say, is about the foot controls. We're going to look at the accelerator, we're going to look at the brake, and we're going to look at the clutch. Yep, so the purpose of this is to explain their use, clarify any terminology, and expand, if I need to expand, because you might already sort of get this anyway, but expand your perception and understanding of what these pedals actually do. Yeah, okay, so we're going to start with the accelerator. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the accelerator, or it's commonly known as the accelerator, but really when you think about it, it equally could be called the decelerator, okay? Because it's used just as much to decelerate the car as it is to accelerate the car, okay? So I think accelerator is probably the wrong word to use for it, and I don't use that word when I'm teaching. What I do use is the gas pedal, okay? So I call it gas pedal because that's what it does, because what's happening effectively is putting a mixture of air and petrol into the engine, more of it, turning a tap on if you like, and making the engine spin quicker, okay? So that's what it's doing. So yes, it will make the car go faster, it'll add some speed if you're pressing it and other things have been done correctly, like you're in the correct gear and whatever, but also it will make the car slow down as well. So I want you to sort of think about that that concept that the accelerator is used to slow the car down as well as make it go faster. Okay, so when you're using the gas pedal, you need to be progressively pressing it, but not stamping on it. Okay, when you want to slow the car down, obviously you're taking your foot off it, and usually the car, the situation is you can see ahead of you that you're going to need to slow down, so you're taking your foot off the gas, and a lot of the time the deceleration is how you deal with situations developing in front of you. Yeah, so if you decelerate, if you're coming off, they call it acceleration sense, if you come off the gas early enough, then it gives you time to deal with things without actually braking. All right, so we refer to the accelerator as the gas pedal. Okay. Okay, well, let's talk about the brake now. The brake pedal is used to slow the car down and bring it to a stop, but I also want you to think about the fact that the brake pedal could be used to speed the car up as well, because under certain circumstances, for example, if you're going down a hill and you wanted to add some speed and you were already braking, then you would take your foot off the brake and the car would start to increase its speed. So I just want you to think about it in that context as well. Like the gas pedal sort of has a kind of that sort of difference to it as well. So think about it from outside. Well, this is a cliche, isn't it? Outside the box, outside the metal box, the car. Yeah, we got out of that. Yeah, so the brake pedal. How to use the brake pedal? If you imagine my hand here is the brake pedal, you place your foot gently on it to start off with, and you very, very gently initially start to press it, and you brake progressively harder, so the pedal's going down, and then you, as the car slows down, you start to reduce the brake pressure further, okay? And you get used to it depending on how fast the car's going and as you get more experience doing it. Now, what you need to try to avoid is jerking to a stop. Yeah, so right at the end, if you analyse what you do, at the very, very end, you reduce the brake pressure further. Now, I'm going to explain that. Okay, I know the brake pedal could, you know, it could be argued that it's quite simplistic, but you do see an awful lot of people jerking to a stop. So if I kind of explain it in this way, if you imagine this is a graph of braking. Okay, so this bottom axis here is loads of speed. So for example, we're doing 50 miles an hour. So that axis, if you like, is loss of speed. So maybe we're doing 50 miles an hour and this is reducing the speed down to 0. Okay, and we're imagining that we are on a perfectly flat surface, right? So we're talking about your action of your foot on the brake pedal here and how the brake actually works, or the effect that your foot would have on it. So loss of speed along the bottom. This axis here is pedal pressure, so how hard you are pressing the pedal down. Yeah, so let's imagine that is loads of pressure and that is no pressure at the bottom. That's what that 0 was down there, look. Okay, so loads of pressure up here but no pressure here. So imagine you're travelling along at say 50 miles an hour and you're wanting to reduce your speed on the flat down to 0 over a given distance, so you can see a tree off in distance that you're going to stop at, or a set of traffic lights or whatever it is. So the movement of your foot on the pedal, if you like, is to very, very gently, not sure how that's working, place your foot on the pedal sort of at 50 miles an hour, and then you gradually start to build the pressure up on the pedal. And as the car loses momentum and speed, you don't need as much braking or as much braking pressure. So you start to reduce the pressure to the point where, if you're on the perfect flat, you don't need any pressure whatsoever. Okay, and it's about getting used to timing that. So in the early stages, that's one of the things we're going to do. We're going to make sure that we get you stopping the car as smooth as we can. And if you're doing any private practice with a supervising driver, you need to try and focus on that. Yeah, just stopping the car nice and smoothly. Now, what can happen in early stages is, because you're not sure how well to press the brake pedal, you might not do any braking at all and then brake really hard later on. We go, they go over handlebars. Yeah? So you get that sort of fault, if you like, and it's just kind of recognizing that you need progressive braking, and then as the car slows down, you're getting towards the tree that we've got as a target, or traffic lights, whatever it is, and you're gently starting to come to a nice smooth stop, reduce the brake pressure as the car comes to a stop. Now, that reducing the pressure at the end, if you're on a slight uphill slope, then you're going to have to stay on brake a little bit, and if you're on a downhill slope, you're still going to have to stay on brake a little bit, otherwise you'll either roll backwards down the hill or you'll roll forwards. Yeah, okay. So that's kind of the technique. I hope that's not too baffling, but I found in past that it helps people to sort of explain it like that. But it's something that you've got to sort of practice doing. What you don't want to do, what can sometimes happen is people will do an awful lot of private practice, but they're jerked to a stop all the time, and it ingrains that jerking to a stop, which if it becomes a norm, it's a little bit awkward to sort of unteach it. Yeah, so that's the brake. Okay, so the clutch pedal, right. So what does a clutch do? Right, it's a pedal that you push down on the left, and what it actually does is it separates the engine from the gearbox, okay, which allows us to do other things, okay, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But before I do that, I just want to draw your attention to a couple of other videos which will elaborate on this a little bit. So finding the biting point, a simple explanation for learners, that will help you in conjunction with what I'm going to talk about. But also, when do I put the clutch down when slowing down? Yeah, those two videos sort of complement this nicely. Okay. So, putting the clutch down separates the engine from the gearbox, which allows us to initially deliver the power of the engine to the road wheels, which is otherwise known as finding the biting point, or as I tend to call it, the biting range. Okay, so that's one thing it does. It also allows us to change gear, which I'm sure you know that. It also allows us low speed manoeuvring by coming in and out of the biting point at low speed, so like when you're parking. Yeah. or creeping out of a junction, for example. It also facilitates engine braking as well, which again is explained in these couple of videos. Also, it allows us to hold the car on the biting point, so we can be efficient in what we're doing. So we can be sort of holding the car on the biting point, ready to move off. So sometimes it's not necessary to put your handbrake on, you can just be on the biting point. So that's what the clutch does. When you push the clutch down, there's certain things that go on in the engine, which I'm now going to talk about in the next little bit. Okay, so here's a basic explanation of what happens when you put the clutch down in a manual car. Okay, hopefully this ain't going to be too confusing. So this is the engine, if you like. Okay, there's your smoke coming out, and what we have is what we call the drivetrain, if you like. So if the engine's running, then that rod that runs through the car, if you like, is rotating, and it's got on it a big disc. Okay, like so. And then if we imagine there's a gap, so that's not connected to anything, it's just a big disc spinning round at the moment. But then there's another big disc here, okay, like so, and that one runs into and through the gearbox. Okay, so let's imagine that's the gearbox, and so that's your gear lever. Okay, and then sort of magical things go on within the gearbox, and the rod, or drivetrain if you like, comes out, and then through the wonders of mechanical designing, the rotating movement, when it's rotating, is sort of changed through 90 degrees into two other rods that go off to the wheels down here. So they're representing the wheels and the tyres. So that rotating movement is then sort of rotated like so, and drive the car along the road. Okay, so that's kind of very simplistically what's going on. But you'll notice that there's an unconnection at this point here. Okay, so if these two discs were connected together, then under pressure, the rotating movement of this drivetrain, or prop shaft I suppose it's called, is then transferred to here, and it rotates that. And then if the car is connected, because it could be that they are separated, this rod or prop shaft could be separated from this part of the prop shaft, start calling it the prop shaft anchors, and therefore it wouldn't rotate. So that would be if the car was in say neutral. But if the car is in a gear, so maybe it's in first gear, then the two prop shafts are connected together, so the rotating carries on down there and carries on to the road wheels. But at the moment, this is separated. So what that means is that the clutch pedal, so if you imagine that is the clutch pedal, then when they are separated like so, that means that the clutch pedal is down. Okay. However, when the clutch pedal is up, so the clutch pedal is up, what that means is that these two discs or plates have come together in the middle, and they're connected like so, which means that the rotating is transferring through there to the other prop shaft, so right away from the engine through the gearbox. If it was in gear, then it will be driving and pushing the road wheel around. Okay, if it was in neutral, then there'd be a brake there. Okay, so if you push the clutch down, it separates them. When you take your foot off the clutch, it joins them together and carries on the rotating. Okay, so that hopefully is a pretty simplistic way of describing it. Yeah, so that's how the clutch works. Romans came a few years back, built nice new road history.